specific to your business, for example, how would I value my company or something like that, that's something that we can do offline in the presentation, but there's going to be a lot here that you want to ask, and that, like Ryan said, other people would have similar questions about cost and structure and process and all that type of stuff. So don't be shy. I'll just kind of go through it, and we'll be good to go. Great.
I think we're good, Alan.
Okay.
Okay. You can go ahead, Alan.
Okay. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you for those online. This is our StartEngine Learn presentation about raising your next round of capital with us. It's a very new process, but it's something that we've been doing for 2 years now, and there's a lot of complexity to it. But it's a brand new and very exciting process for companies to raise capital for their businesses, and we're really excited to share what we've built for you so far. So a little bit about myself. I am the Director of Business Development at StartEngine. And a little bit about StartEngine is we were first built as a tech accelerator by our CEO, Howard Mars. He'll come into the presentation afterwards to speak to you guys and answer a little kind of CEO to CEO questions. But Howard got a serial entrepreneur, came to fame as building the acclaimed video game company Activision, and he left that post and really wanted to see Los Angeles become the newest tech hub of the country. And he saw a lot of great things happening here. LA graduates the most amount of engineers, but they all leave, and yada yada. I'm sure you've heard a lot of that mentality. But he saw it in about 2011, created StartEngine, did the classic accelerator model, invested in companies, small checks very early on, and watched them kind of grow into their various stages. And one of the most, and he talks about how a lot of the companies that he funded had a really tough time of raising capital in the next rounds. So when the Jobs Act got put into place in 2012, when it was signed by Obama, it was really one of those legislations that had bipartisan support and was meant for kickstarting the economy and creating small business jobs by helping small business owners like yourself. So that was in 2012. In 2015, we launched StartEngine, the platform, when the first Regulation A Plus came to be, which we call large OPO. And I'll go into all of that, but to give you an idea, we've been in business since, we actually just passed our 2-year birthday, so June 2015 to now. And as you guys know, essentially we help companies raise capital online, and the main game changer is now anybody can be an investor, you can be a non-accredited investor, and still invest in a company that you know and love or really excited about their mission. That's a little bit about us. So currently what's live on StartEngine, just to give you guys a little peek into our successes, we have a solar company, an example of a B2B type company that is doing very well on StartEngine that has new technology for solar panels. That's called Raise On Solar. They're based here in Los Angeles. They've raised almost $4 million, and we'll go into how the 2 regulations split off of what you're able to raise. They either cap you at just over $1 million, and there's a certain set of requirements there, or $1 million up to $50 million each year, but there's a whole other set of requirements in order to be approved there. And 2 of our current successful companies under the what's called regulation crowdfunding, regulation CF, as we call small OPO, the up to $1,070,000, are companies Slybelts and GeoPortal. So really excited to see their progress. Recently launched, more for you guys and how we envision you guys becoming on StartEngine as a company called Gab, FamiCash, and Life Clinics of America, all recently launched. You can see all in different stages of their campaign. And this is kind of give you a look at when you first launch, how many days are left, and what the early traction is for these companies. So a little bit about StartEngine currently. We have just over 93,000 total users on StartEngine. This is since June of 2015. Where we're at currently, we're really proud of this. On average, about 30% of the investors into a given campaign come from our own community, and that's continuing to grow. That's something that we work really hard at, as you might see in our email newsletters, and how we really try to connect with our investor community to not only launch companies that we're really excited about for them to bring their own network, but then to tap into those people and say, there are other opportunities in StartEngine that you can get behind. So we're really excited about that. The average investment on StartEngine is about $1,500. Raises to date, we have it's just past 35 million currently for over 40 companies. And to give you a sense, we've launched about 65 companies in total in the success rate. Large OPO average raise, that's where you can raise up to 50 million each year. That's an average of $4.75 million. And the small OPO average raise is just under $400,000. Again, that's the under $1 million regulation. And momentum today, we're really excited. We actually, we just finished Q2, as you guys know, and we're crunching those stats right now. But for Q1, we raised over $8 million for our companies just in Q1. We're really excited that 2017 is a really growth year for us. We're seeing a lot of companies that are interested and are becoming successful. One second here. I'll go with the mic.
We're going to lob up for the end.
Perfect. Great. And then 15% of our investors are repeat investors. Again, that's something that we're really excited about, which means not just engagement from our own community, but how often those investors come back and invest in one or more deals. Okay, so we're going to go a little more into the technical side. What we call online public offerings, OPOs. As I mentioned, there's a small OPO, a large OPO, and then something called a select OPO. And we'll go into that very quickly. Or I'm sorry, not very quickly. We're going to go into the brief history very quickly. As I mentioned to you guys, Obama signed the Jobs Act in 2012. Little StartEngine history in February of 2016. The largest ever large OPO became funded that was on StartEngine with this company called Ilya Motors. They raised up to 17 million on our platform from over 6,000 people. So that was a huge success story for us. Small OPOs, the up to $1,070,000 that you can raise, became enacted and became a regulation on May of 2016 of last year. And in March of this year, as I kind of mentioned with our growth, 4 companies in the last 4 months in March raised the $1 million maximum. So we're starting to see a lot of momentum here. And it's a great time to be involved with StartEngine because, of course, when the regulations first came about, there's a lot of new stuff you have to learn and get used to. Whereas right now, we've been through this. We've seen how companies have been successful. We've unfortunately seen how companies have not been. And we can share our best practices with you guys to make you as successful as possible. Okay, so I mentioned the 3 types of OPOs. So the first is the small OPO. That's where you can raise up to $1,070,000. It's a little bit of a funky number. It used to be up to $1 million, but that was when they came out with the regulations in 2012. So just this past year, the SEC said because of inflation from 5 years ago, we're actually going to increase it by 70,000. So if you have a question about that, that's where it's jumped to $1,070,000. It's open to the general public. Again, that's one of the biggest game changers here, that non-accredited investors can invest in private companies. One of the biggest game changers with the small OPO versus the large OPO is that no SEC qualification is needed. And if you're taking notes, that's great, but we also can share the presentation with you as well. So don't feel like you're missing out. And for those of you online, we'll do that as well. So no SEC qualification needed, which means once you submit your campaign on StartEngine and we approve you with our due diligence, making sure everything's correct, your legal, financial, all those documents are in order, we file the Form C to the SEC and we're ready to push you live. With the large OPO, and I'll get to it, but in short, you have to actually apply with what's called the Form 1A instead of the Form C. And it's more of a back and forth with the SEC. It's like a mini
IPO of sorts where you get comments and feedback from the SEC, you provide a revised round, and you go back and forth, and it's a bit of a time frame. It's about 3 to 4 months to be approved there. So again, for the small OPO, the Form C must be filed, which we will do on your behalf. Basic legal disclosures are needed, and no CPA review is needed for raises below 107,000. And we'll go into this in more detail, but essentially we've stripped down the rule and regulation to make it as easy as possible for a company in any stage, which means if you set your maximum, not at the maximum of 1,070,000, but if you set your maximum at 107,000, you don't need a legal sign-off of your legal documents that you're inputting, and you don't need an independent CPA review of your financials. You can self-certify your legal and financial documents. So that means that you'll be saving on legal and CPA costs while being able to raise up to 107,000. Also, one of the benefits of StartEngine over any platform is we have the ability to do what's called a rolling close, where we've had companies, and one of our $1 million companies was actually our first to kind of prove out this method. You set your maximum at 107,000 to start, you self-certify your financials, you'll be able to disperse on funds once you reach a certain amount, take the funds into your account, then pay for the legal and CPA requirements that you need, input those new documents on StartEngine. We'll be able to raise your maximum to 1,070,000, and you can go through in a very cost-effective manner. But we'll go into that a little later. And one of the main differences with the small OPO is you cannot solicit investors until the raise is live. There's all sorts of communication requirements please come in. Thanks for joining us. No problem at all. There's all sorts of communication requirements, and they're pretty easy to understand, and we'll provide a guideline. But the main difference for the small OPO and the large OPO is that you're going to be onboarding with us, whether that takes you 1 week, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. During that time frame, you can't go out to your community and say, look out for this offering that's coming. You have to keep it under wraps until you go live. And that's just for priming the audience and protecting investors that don't have equal access to information. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. Your shares do become tradable after 1 year for the small OPO. So if an investor invests in your company after 1 year, their shares technically become liquid, and we're in the process of creating a marketplace where if you want to provide liquidity for your investors, they can liquidate after 1 year through our online marketplace, similar to a StubHub or eBay, where it's just a secondary market buyer and seller type agreement. For the large OPO, you can raise up to 50 million each year. And don't worry, sir, I can send you the presentation afterwards, so no problem. But please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask during the presentation because there's a lot to cover. So you can raise up to 50 million each year from the general public, and that's a huge, huge accomplishment for the regulation. You do need SEC qualification for a month time frame of going back and forth with the SEC that reviews your submitted Form 1A and provides you feedback. Your Form 1A mentioned it must be filed. There's extensive legal disclosures. It's a much more thorough document. And you do need a 2-year independent audit. So you don't need a financial review, you actually need a 2-year audit. So as you can see, legal and financial costs, as well as time frame for a Reg A Plus for a large OPO is much more extensive. But if you do have the capital and you are in the position to do so, once you get approved, you can raise up to 50 million each year from the crowd.
Is the first small OPO also a 1-year time frame?
Yes, so you can raise up to 1,070,000 each year, forever, essentially. And as I mentioned, you can actually solicit investors prior to going live in the large OPO. You can do what's called a test the waters, which is basically, would you be interested once we do go live? And investors can actually go in on your campaign on StartEngine and reserve shares as kind of reservations. They don't have to, they have to put in their bank information, but nothing gets drawn, of course, until they go live. So it's up to them if they, when you do go live, to actually put their money where their mouth is. So we've seen some drop off there, but it's a good case to see, what the interest is. And one of the main benefits is shares do become tradable immediately after your offering closes, which is pretty unique. A select OPO is our third offering on StartEngine. You may know of this, more commonly known as a Reg D offering, which is basically a pool of accredited investors that want to invest in your company on more of on a side raise. That's been available for quite some time now to just get a pool of angel investors to come into your company. We offer the select OPO mainly for a company. If you imagine, if you've hit the 1,070,000 maximum and you've oversubscribed, what you can do to maximize the momentum that you've gained is open a select OPO. Now all of the investors that would have come to your page and can't invest in the 1,070,000 small OPO that's oversubscribed, they can invest in the select OPO, which we can open immediately after your small OPO. Again, they do have to be accredited, so some, not all, have the chance to invest, but you can eliminate the time frame of, oh, I've got this great momentum, I've got this open to the public, I need to capture the excitement. Oh, I have to wait 3 to 4 months for the large OPO to become live. We can open you up immediately to a select OPO where accredited investors come in. And I can show you some examples of companies that have done that successfully on StartEngine and have raised 1.5, 1.8 within the same time period. So a select OPO, it's open only to accredited investors. You can't solicit investors until the raise is live, and the shares are tradable after 1 year, but amongst accredited investors only. So this is kind of a traditional for accredited by accredited. So again, it's kind of like an ancillary offering that we offer. Really what you need to think about here is that it's only open to accredited investors, which is what has usually been around for quite some time. Okay, so stories on StartEngine. As you can see here, bikes, boards, bikinis, bots, belts, alliteration, we love it, but it really shows you the variance of companies that have been successful on StartEngine. I get a lot of questions. I'm a B2B company with crowdfunding. I'd like to think that it's probably more geared towards B2C. Well, as I mentioned, the Rayton Solar Company has done extremely well, and there are cases of any type of company really succeeding. It's about finding your audience, knowing who would be interested in investing in your company, and then executing on how to target those people. And that could be for really any business. So we're really excited to grow the business, but these success stories will mainly play in how they've successfully navigated the small OPO to select or to large and all of that. So I'll go over that. Okay, so Saunders Electric Car is one of our more famous success stories. They did a small OPO. His dream is to build the most attractive, affordable electric car ever. Here is a sketch. He actually, he completed his raise, he oversubscribed, and he's been updating his campaign page with actual models that he's building in Italy right now. So it's really cool to look at that process. The strategy, raise capital from the fans who believe in the same wild idea. Those fans were fans of his previous venture, which is the Saunders electric bike that you may have heard that are all around. There's kind of the fat tires, the electric bike kind of craze. He's one of the most successful companies on Indiegogo doing crowdfunding campaigns for the e-bike, the Saunders e-bike. And he said, let's take that one step further. I want to do what Tesla's doing, but make it more affordable for the everyday person. So he incorporated as a new company. He set a pre-money valuation of $33 million, pretty incredible. And he offered $120 million minimum investment to make it as accessible as possible to everyone, ran a 75-day campaign, and raised $1 million from over 1,600 investors. So that's just kind of the epitome of what we're trying to build here. They're also a full service company. I'll go into what that means, but essentially we provide a service where we are extremely hands-on with a company from start to finish. That's everything from onboarding to once you're live, helping you execute marketing strategies. And we can show you success rates of companies that participate in that program. So golf board is another example, one that we're really proud of. The dream is to bring these golf boards as these golf carts to as many golf courses as possible, really to spread the love of the game. There seems to be a lack of enjoyment in the younger generation of golf, and if you can put them on this electric surfboard cart, you're going to really get some excitement there. And they've seen a lot of growth around the clubs that they do have the golf boards available for. So the goal was to actually lower manufacturing costs with this capital. They set their pre-money valuation of $8 million. This is kind of a good example of Saunders versus golf boards. Saunders is a brand new company, huge idea. He set his valuation at $33 million. On StartEngine, we pride ourselves on letting you decide what your company is worth. It's up to you to decide that, and it's up to you to make that an attractive investment for other people. We can certainly help you with thinking about ways to come up with a correct valuation for your company, but it's an example of if you have a big idea, but you've got a lot of fans or people that would be interested in it, you can maybe set your valuation a little higher. Golf board is a great idea. If they had real revenue, sales, a real company, it wasn't a brand new company. They set a modest valuation of $8 million, again, made it pretty accessible with the $125 million investment, and they're able to raise actually $1.5 million. So they oversubscribed their small OPO. They saw so much momentum oversubscription that they actually were our first company to transition into the select OPO, and they raised around $400,000 to $500,000 from accredited investors only. So it's a really exciting thing to provide for them. Sure.
How do you set the time frame for your campaign? 60-day?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question is how you set your campaign time frame. We recommend 60 days. Why 60 days? It gives you 2 months to really think of high-level marketing strategies and to be able to execute them. But once it comes to 45 days, 50 days, we can show you, again, this is kind of part of our service that we can provide of exactly what type of copy and how frequently you need to update and communicate with your investors to promote that urgency and scarcity when your campaign is ending, because you always can extend your campaign. So we've had companies that have set 60 days. When it hits 50 days, 10 days left, guys, this is your chance. 5 days left, 2 days left. There's a huge spike of momentum of investment. And then the last day you can say, due to overwhelming support, we're actually going to extend our campaign for another 15 or 30 days, and you start that cycle again. So it's enough time frame for it and not to be some sort of set your campaign for 15 days and keep doing it. It's a realistic time frame, but there is an ability to extend where companies may last 2.5, 3 months in total. But great question, thank you. Okay, and MagnaBid is one of the examples that we're really proud of. Part of our full service package is for a company to come in for these workshops that we hold. We actually held one yesterday where we give hands-on support from our entire team, build their content page. We have legal and CPA help here in person, and we try to get you as close as possible to finish line. And MagnaBid came in about 2 months ago to our workshop. They launched in the next few days, and there are, I think, right at 107,000 plus, and they're still live. So it's a really good example of a company that comes in, meets us in person, takes advantage of our resources, launches a campaign. But it's also a great example of what I mentioned about this set your maximum at 107,000 to start, because they were able to onboard very quickly. They self-certified their financials and legal documents. Now their campaign, if you go to StartEngine, it reads 107K plus, which means they're in the process of getting those new documents inputted. Once we upload them, then the ticker will read, let's say 150 or 160, whatever they've gotten in that interim period. So you don't need to pause the campaign and investors can still invest. We can't legally display it until the new requirements are uploaded on StartEngine. So it's a really great example of a company that has come in, met with us, launched, and then also did the small, set the maximum at 107,000, and then move onwards.
Is there a separate charge for that aspect of the workshop to get everything?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Our full service package is a $4,000 fee up front. What that I'll go into what it includes. Bottom line is that we'll build and design your entire campaign page. We will streamline your entire onboarding process, working with your legal and financial documents or your legal and financial team to help you onboard and navigate our backend as quickly as possible. to provide any type of ancillary support or advice. You're able to come in for that workshop, meet with lawyers and CPAs free of charge, and our content team to finish everything if you haven't gotten there. And then most of the value is our account management and marketing consulting services, where any type of question, anything that you have our full support, access to myself or two other colleagues who are directors of business development. And a lot of that is questions without your raise, but it's also, here's where you are in week 1, here's where you are at week 2, here are the strategies that other companies on StartEngine that fit your same mold were able to execute in order to reach this certain level. And we can try to guide you to become as successful as possible.
And the 4,000 is all in. No tax.
All in,
Yeah.
all in, yeah. Okay, so why raise from the crowd? You might say, if I can raise money from anyone, it seems pretty low cost. This seems like a very attractive option. We certainly think it is, but there are certain, I wouldn't say disadvantages, but possible disadvantages that you should definitely keep in mind, because there are some requirements for you to choose this route of fundraising, as there are with everything you do. So I'll start with the possible disadvantages first. Your financials will be public. Obviously, some entrepreneurs don't like to publicize their financials. We believe in transparency, but it's something for you to decide on your own. We certainly don't believe that publicizing your financials will make or break your next move as a company, but it's something for you to keep in mind. Of course, investors need to come to the campaign page, review your campaign story, everything you talk about of how great of an opportunity this is, but also look at the nitty-gritty and look at your balance sheet and statement of cash flow, equity, just kind of basic financial structures. But obviously, as you've seen with the Saunders company, they incorporated a month before they went live. There's nothing on the financials. It's more of just, do we really think this can happen? And that's what we've seen on StartEngine. It's less about the financials and more about the emotional connection and the storytelling and the kind of belief that this company will really go somewhere that an investor is really excited about. So your financials will become public. Successful raises take focused strategy and hard work. That's part of the reason why we offer this full service package, to help you as much as possible along the way. But the common thread with every company on StartEngine that's been successful is the CEO and the team is dedicated to this type of fundraising. We've had companies who haven't been successful on StartEngine, and they treat this as, okay, once I'm live, I'm ready to focus on my business and the investors will come. It's very much not this type of raise. You have to think about it as a true crowdfunding raise, where we work as hard as possible to get our StartEngine community into your company. But as you might think, not your typical demographic or your typical investor. Hopefully a portion of those people will be on StartEngine. It's not our entire database. And you know exactly who speaks, who you speak the best to in the public of, you know, anyone that would be interested in your company. So you need to work really hard with our guidance to attract those people to your campaign. And all companies have reporting obligations. So what that means is, for a small OPO, you do have to republicize your financials. It's just an update of your financial report each year to the SEC, which we can help you do. And that's just a, hey guys, it's the new year, check out our new financials. That's as much of a requirement of communication post-raise. So it's really simple, but you do have to keep uploading your new financials. For the large OPO, a little more onerous. It's twice a year and it's a yearly audit. But usually if a company is successful with a large OPO, they certainly have the financial wherewithal to withstand the reporting requirements. Okay, so costs and expenditures. This is something that we'll go into detail. If you have any questions, please let me know. Upfront cost for the small OPO. For raises under 107,000, none. So if you choose to not participate in our full service package, you can create a campaign on StartEngine, use our helpful tooltips, our online webinars, everything on our back end that we've built to help companies go from A to Z. You can build an entire campaign page. You can upload the necessary financial documents. As I mentioned, you don't need the CPA review and the legal sign-off at this stage. So you could possibly launch for free, no upfront cost, when you set your maximum to 107,000. For raises up to $107,000 to $1 million, where you want to set your maximum at $1 million, this is where you do need the legal and CPA work done. It's usually about $4,000 to $10,000 for financial review and legal documentation. That can be shrunk if, what can't be shrunk is the need for a CPA review. So on average, that's anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000. If you're a new company, it should be on the lower side. It should be something that a CPA does need to stamp and review your financials independently. But if it's a new company or you're under, let's say, $500,000 in revenue, it shouldn't be too onerous. The legal documentation is really more so a legal sign-off. So if you set your maximum at $107,000 to start, you're going to have all of your legal financials that we've approved, legal documents, on StartEngine. So what we require is just a legal sign-off from a lawyer to make sure, okay, now you're going to raise some pretty serious money from investors. We want a lawyer to come look in and see that everything is okay. And that doesn't need to be a full $5,000 cost on the legal side in terms of creating your whole raise, because you've already done that work on the back end. So you can hire a lawyer to say, hey, I just need you to go in and just check everything is good, it makes sense, it's what StartEngine requires, and we can move forward from there. So on average, we estimate the cost to be around $5,000 if you want to set your maximum at $1,070,000 to start. So StartEngine fees for the small OPO, 6% of your total raise. We do allow international investors, only not from Canada. Canada is the one country that we don't allow investors from. There's some technicalities with the SEC of Canada that doesn't allow us to do so, but we actually do allow international investors. It does take a little more back-end transactional work. That's why there's an 8% fee, but mostly it's a 6% of what you raise goes to StartEngine, so a maximum of right above $60,000 of the $1,070,000 that you could potentially raise. Again, the full service package is $4,000. I'll go into that, but if you have any questions right now, let me know. For large OPO, the upfront costs, as I mentioned, legal and accounting, $20,000 to $50,000. Two-year financial audit is usually around $15,000 to $20,000, and you're going to have a substantial amount of upfront costs, which is why we're really proud of stripping down the regulation and making it as flexible as possible for a company that's getting started, where you could potentially raise up to $1,070,000 for just a few $1,000s upfront. Again, you can also structure that where you don't need to have that $5,000 upfront. You can take it from the raise once you reach the $100,000 limit or you're getting there. So we find that to be a really helpful way. So for the large OPO, for the Reg A Plus, is a different fee structure. We can't take just a percentage of the raise. So there's two options. There's either a $50 per investor option or a $20,000 a month option. If you think you can bring in a lot of high check investment, you probably want to go with the $50 per investor. Let's say someone invests $20,000 in a campaign, we only take $50 from that. But if you're a company that has a big audience, you're going to bring hopefully thousands of investors, you may just want to do a flat monthly fee and not pay per investor, especially if you're going to put your minimum investment at, let's say $100, $50 goes to us. That could be a margin you don't want. So just two options for you to keep in mind. And you can see that there are escrow and back-end transactional fees involved with the large OPO. That all gets rolled into the 6% for the small OPO, but there's just some technicalities on why we can't do that for the large. So you don't have to worry about all those fees. With the small OPO, that all gets included in the 6%. So for the select OPO, they're similar. You can do either a per investor or a monthly flat fee of $200 per investor or a $20,000 per month flat fee, and there are back-end transactional fees. Are there any questions about our fee structure?
Small OPO.
Yeah.
It's going to be the financial review cost plus the 6% plus the full service fee.
The financial review and legal documentation that's provided by the our lawyers will be there.
So the question is, what is kind of the total sum cost? So yeah, the $4,000 package, you choose that, that's upfront. the legal and financial work. If you do have legal and CPAs on staff, you can certainly use them. You have to be careful, not necessarily for the legal, but for the CPA. If they've done work on your books before, they're not independent. And per rule, it needs to be an independent CPA. So if you do have a CPA or like a CFO on staff, there'll probably be a lesser charge for the independent CPA because your books are already well in order, but it does need to be an independently reviewed statement.
And how did you say before that you would estimate the legal and the accounting costs within that work check?
So that estimation, this is, what we want to do is provide you the max that we've seen, just so you're aware. But under our estimation, the total fees for a legal and CPA is around $2,000 to $5,000 for a independent review, and a few $1,000 cost for a lawyer to just give his or her legal sign-off. So not kind of create the whole, essentially. What we've done in the past, some lawyers have said, we're going to actually create this whole Form C for you and then just plug in the information. We've worked really hard to build in the back end where once you put in all that information, it's essentially a stripped down Form C that we file on your behalf. And we convert that into an SEC EDGAR filing document. So it's really convenient that way. Hey, thanks for joining us. So that's why we just need a legal sign off, which should be just a few $1,000s. And if your independent review is $2,000 to $3,000, that's where the $5,000 that I estimated comes into play. Great. Any other questions? Okay. So legal and financial, just to go a little more into detail of what is needed. We do have a Form C basic disclosure for the small OPO. Again, we worked really hard, and when you create a campaign on StartEngine and you press Edit My Campaign, you'll see 8 different tabs. If you fill out all those 8 tabs, submit it to StartEngine, we approve it. That's exactly what the SEC requires as a Form C document, which we file on your behalf. So that's part of the benefit of StartEngine, is that you can essentially create your entire Form C in this kind of TurboTax-like mentality of you're not thinking that you're doing it, but you're actually filling out this legal document, and we'll be able to file it on your behalf. So for raises under $107,000, you do need 2 years of financials, just CEO self-certified. For raises above, you do need an independent CPA review, as I mentioned. And then this is also a good point to note. For your second small OPO, you do need a financial audit. So you can raise $1 million each year, but if you've raised $1 million the first year and the second year you're going to go back to the small OPO, you do need to do an audit of your financials, not just a review. So for a, and to go back on that, actually the rule is if you raise up to $500,000 to $1,070,000 in your second combined in your second small OPO, that's where you need your audit of your financials. So if, for example, if you raise $200,000 in your first small OPO, you can raise up to $300,000 without having to do that audit. But if it's your second raise and the combined raise amount is above $500,000, that's where you need to do the audit. And again, we can kind of pause that campaign until you have audited financials. So for the large OPOs, I mentioned extensive disclosure legal documents. For all raises, we require a 2-year financial audit. That's per the rule. That's not StartEngine requirement. SEC qualification, the Form 1A takes about, we like to say 60 days, but we've seen it longer, around 90 days. And most companies go through 1 to 2 rounds of edits with the SEC. And it takes about 4 months for companies to get qualified. For the small OPO, you do need a private placement memorandum, a PPM. And usually what we can do is we can take your campaign page, which acts as your Form C, edit it to, let's say, we've oversubscribed, we've raised this amount, now we're doing this new offering. But your Form C can essentially act as your private placement memorandum, and it can be somewhere where these investors can go in and invest into your campaign. You actually don't need your financials required because it is for accredited investors only, and they can, the traditional method is for them to actually request to see your financials, you provide them, and then they provide a sizable check, as you guys know. So you actually don't need it. The financials they are public, but you can say we don't want them to be public. And no SEC qualification is needed there. Okay, so this is just to give you an idea of how easy it is for a company to invest, or for an investor to invest in a company on StartEngine. Believe it or not, we've worked tirelessly to improve the product and the page in which an investor invests in your company. 2 years ago when we first launched, there were 3 different pages that you'd get directed to. It'd probably take you a minute or 2 to complete an investment, and there was a lot of documentation, a lot of steps that we required. So we're really excited. If you go on to StartEngine, you click Invest Now into a company. All you need to do is search for companies that interest you. You click Invest Now once you read up on their story and watch their video, and then the page in which you invest literally takes about 20 to 30 seconds. It's one page. You input your information there. There's all sorts of helpful tool tips. And we put this slide in here really just to show you it's not some complicated process where a company needs to, or an investor needs to provide, you know, their wire information, so Social Security. That's certainly an option, but you can pay through ACH, which is most of our transactions today, kind of checking account, savings account. Actually, last week, we also just launched the ability for investors to invest via credit cards and debit cards. So we hope that's going to help a lot of investors just easily pull out their card and invest on StartEngine. So we're really excited about that. Go ahead.
The video and the story on the company, is
Yeah.
that something that your full service package provides? Do you create that video?
Yeah, great question. So with our full service package, we do build and design your entire campaign page. We don't produce or create the video. We certainly can advise you on storyboard and scripts and something to really kind of shape what a video would look like, but we don't actually have a production team to shoot. We can certainly provide you with video production vendors that we've worked with in the past that can do it for pretty low cost because they know the companies. We typically, how long a crowdfunding video should be is about like a minute, minute and a half. Something short, sweet, succinct. Shouldn't be something that's 5 minutes long.
From an investment standpoint, is there an opportunity for investors to retract in a certain time period?
So great question. Is there an opportunity for investors to cancel their investment, essentially? Yes. So once they submit an investment, it goes through a clearing process. At any point in time, you can actually cancel your investment. Once it does become cleared, then a company, if they want to disperse on funds, you as the company have to post a notice saying we're doing our first round of closing or we're closing our campaign. And that serves as a notice for any investor because that's an automatic email notification to the investor to say, oh shoot, maybe I forgot that I invested or I can't make that investment now. They can go and cancel their investment. So per the requirements, we do have to let all investors know that a company is taking an action where if they don't redact their investment within 3 business days, then it'll be final. Yeah.
Do you have any statistics on the percentage of investors that end up canceling before?
Yeah, so percentage of investors that cancel after a rolling close has been announced is very slim. It's probably like 1 or 2%. What is tricky is when you extend your campaign or you want to input new information to your campaign that you think can help, which is what we call a material change, and we'll have to file an amendment to the SEC. And whenever there's new information that's deemed information that maybe a prior investor would like to see that could change his or her investment, that requires a notice that, hey, there's new information on the StartEngine on your campaign page, and we have to reconfirm all pending investors because it's our process of saying, new information, if you still want to be interested in investing, click this link and they'll be reconfirmed. So that drop-off rate, not necessarily when you post an update to say, hey, we're doing a closing, but more so we're extending the offering, we need to reconfirm your investment. There are always people that for some reason just can't click the link and are not going to reinvest. Our process in doing so is we follow up with every investor that needs to reconfirm, email them a few times, and our investor services team actually gets on the phone and tries to call that investor to help them reconfirm. But that drop-off rate is usually around 5%, a little bit more. Okay, so I'm gonna go a little bit into detail on this slide. It's what you guys might be most interested in learning about is once we help you get live, it's all about how you can successfully market your offering on StartEngine. And these are all different ways that we've seen work to varying different degrees of success in terms of crowdfunding marketing. There's all sorts of information out there available. I recommend looking at Kickstarter, Indiegogo, our information, everything that you can find about a crowdfunding raise, how to attract as many, not just eyeballs to the page, but actually investors, converting them into investors. So we'll kind of go through with a few examples here. Number one way to market your campaign on StartEngine or through crowdfunding is through email marketing. What this is simply if you have an email database, you have friends, family, anybody that you can put into an email list that you can blast an email to say, hey, check out this new opportunity with my company. That is your warmest lead. Essentially, if you can think about it, if you're a company, you have people in your database that know your brand, know your company, and there's less of a leap there to say, what is this offering? I already know Prism Sport, for example, so you can think about that. Email campaign is what you should be doing at least once or twice a week to your database. Again, we go through all of these best practices in our full service package as part of our service to help you get to your potential. But you should at least email your database 1 to 2 times per week. Campaign updates, and again, we can help you with copy, frequency, everything like that. Campaign updates is something where when you post an update on your campaign page, and this is similar to how it is on Kickstarter and Indiegogo if you've had experience with their platforms, it's, hey, we just passed the $100,000 milestone, we're so excited. You post that update, it gets blasted to everyone that's either been an investor or has clicked the follow the heart button, which is, I'm interested in getting updates, but I just haven't invested yet. So it's a really great way to reach all of your warmest leads. If they're already investors, you can say, hey, we've already reached $100,000. We'd love your help to spread the message. Here's how to share the campaign. So the investors can say, I believe in this company. I need more people to believe in it for them to achieve their goals. So campaign updates is really key. And Jetpack Aviation is an example of a company that updated their campaign twice a day for the last 7 days of their campaign, roughly. And they're able to attract over $80,000 of investment through doing so. So it's about constantly just providing this feeling of momentum and excitement into your campaign. Besides email campaigns, email marketing, the number 2 way to attract investment into your campaign is through paid media. Paid media is basically just a fancy term for you're paying for advertising online. What we've seen, we've tried all different platforms. By far the most performing platform is Facebook advertising. I'm sure you've all been there. You've all heard about Facebook advertising. This is where if you're on your feed, you see those sponsored posts either on the side or in your feed of companies advertising their services. Usually it's for products or signups to their email. There are literally, you can post ads where it has a little StartEngine logo, your company, and says, invest now. What we've seen work best is a video ad, a video clip of your product. Could be your campaign video, some kind of engaging video that gets people interested. They click, goes right back to your StartEngine campaign page directly, and they can look to invest there. We have best practices on how to optimize the campaign. We have built in our platform ways where you can put in your Facebook ad account pixel on the back end of our platform, so we can help you analyze all of the traffic and data that you're getting from that Facebook ad campaign that you're running, and we can kind of spit that back out to you in a concise way to say, here's what you've done so far. We've had companies be in your path already, and here's how they've optimized. And it's a really great way to test small and to see what ad and to whom works best and scale from there. Again, this is a really interesting way where our company who started at the 107,000, what you can do is you can disperse on your first, let's say 40,000, take that 10 or 20,000, put into something where you're actually paying for conversions and scale your campaign from there. So if you know you're going to put 10,000, you're going to get $25,000 investment return. You keep building on that until there's much more of a margin, and you grow your conversions and investments that way. And we can talk further about that. We certainly have vendors that have done that very successfully on StartEngine. Contests. This has worked to varying degree. I think it definitely works if you have got an engaged community. And this is where you can say, let's say I have a prize where it's 2 Super Bowl tickets, for example. If you drive in this many followers on the campaign, or you drive this much traffic, or you sign up with your email, each action leads to a certain amount of entries into a contest. And there's certain applications online. One that we've worked with is called Gleam, where they set up an easy-to-use campaign, and based on someone's online activity, they can get more entries because they're excited to get the prize, and ultimately it'll help you either capture emails or capture traffic and activity to your campaign page. So that's what contests do. Jetpack did a really cool one to actually the first civilian to be tethered up and ride their jetpack, and they drove a lot of traffic there. But yes, excuse me, yes, GLE. I think it's actually GLEE, 2 E's. So check them out. Perks, we recommend perks for any type of campaign. Essentially, this is very similar to a Kickstarter, Indiegogo campaign, where you can say, if you invest $1,000 or more, you will get 10% lifetime discount of our products. Something where you can really build the engagement, and you're not only attracting investors, you're attracting customers. We've seen this work very well for B2C product-based companies, where their customers said, listen, I think this is a good investment, but 20% of products that I use forever is a really attractive investment perk. And we've had companies attract a lot of customers through the perks, and the cycle kind of, it feeds itself, where you attract a customer to become an investor, but through the discount, they become a customer again, and it kind of is this nice cycle moving forward. And we can certainly help you based on your company, what would be attractive perks for your campaign. Press works very well, and I'm gonna kind of include this into press/live events. You want to be careful of what we can help you and how you communicate the raise outside of your campaign on StartEngine. There are certain communication rules, but done right, you can hold live events, and you can certainly reach out to press and have them write compliant language about your offering and about your product. So a good example is Golf Board. They went to a PGA Tour event while their campaign was ongoing. They made sure not to mention any type of terms about their offering at the event, but they were able to sell, I think they brought in like a few 100,000 of orders of the golf board at the event. They immediately updated their campaign on StartEngine, and it just took off. So there's a really good way to think about, once you're live on StartEngine, you can do a lot of live events outside of the raise that brings awareness in a compliant way. And as soon as you update your campaign, and again, you create this excitement and momentum building, it can be a really great way to drive traffic to it. Influencer marketing is one that works very well, but it is really tough to gain the right type of influencer. As I'm sure all you guys know, everyone talks about how brands are now advertising online with influencers, with the whole Instagram and Twitter kind of come up. An example of a good one with Rayton Solar, when they first went live, they got Bill Nye the Science Guy to actually be the face of their campaign, and through his channels and networks, it drove a ton of interest and investment. And it's something to think about, whether you're a beauty product, whether you're an athletic apparel company, who is your kind of person that really speaks to your audience? Who would you love to have wearing your brand or being associated with your brand? If you can get that person to speak on your behalf, you're targeting exactly the niche of investors and people that would be interested in your company. So that's why influencer marketing works so well, and done in the right way, it can be very powerful. Do you have any questions about the marketing best practices? No? And again, this is something where we provide all kind of best practices and how to do this online. Part of our full service package is to really help you one-on-one go through each of these and see what works the best for your campaign and how to optimize your campaign to the best that we've seen. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really important to understand that you're in kind of a golden age of possibly getting this type of fundraising. because we've seen how companies have done poorly and we've seen how companies have done well, and we can model companies' successful paths to yours based on your company, where you're at. We have a valuation spreadsheet where we can tell you based on your company what type of status you're at or what type of revenue stage you're at. We've had companies raise this amount and they've done X, Y, and Z to get there. So we have data to help you really reach your goals. It's about just executing effectively the best practice that we've seen work well. And that ties into my possible disadvantages, where it really takes hard work with our guidance to get there, but we've seen the rewards really be fruitful, where you can raise up to $1 million from people that are personally engaged in your business, building this brand ambassadorship at the terms that you set for your company. And that's something that hasn't been done before.
This is a question that works back a little bit, but how do you determine what the minimum investment is per individual investor?
Yeah, it's a great question. How do you determine the minimum investment? That's part of where we can provide you guidance. We recommend around $300 to $500 as a minimum investment, where you want to make it as accessible as possible to anyone who'd be interested. But you don't want to make it $50, for example, because then you might get a ton of people in the $50 range, and it takes that much more investors to be able to get you the amount that you'd want to raise.
It seemed that a few of your examples were $125.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Those were examples that probably happened maybe a few months ago. Our more recent successes have kind of heeded our advice of a higher minimum investment. And we've just seen that work a little bit better just because they don't have to attract as many people. But those campaigns certainly were a benefit of all of the momentum and traffic they were able to build through marketing. So if you have a minimum investment of $100, that's great. You just need to attract a lot of people, and those companies, we can share with you exactly how they're able to do that. But just I speak to a ton of companies. We've seen through data, $300 to $500 really makes sense. But it's a personal opinion. If you've got, your product, your price point, if it's a very low price point, but you've got people very engaged, it's completely up to you. So we can definitely talk about that. Any other questions on the marketing? Okay, so here is the slide about the full service program. I went into it a little briefly. So on average, companies raise $300,000 more through our full service program. This kind of makes sense because it's our one-on-one hand-holding through the entire process. But this is not to say that you have to do the full service program. We've had success stories of companies that have come in, they've built their campaign, or they've come into our platform online. We build our platform so anybody has the ability to go through, fill everything out. It just takes a lot more work. There's a lot more technicality involved, and we've had companies participate in the full service program, not really worry about the onboarding heavy lifting as much. That's something that we can help you with. And then most of the value is once you're live, that's our constant attention to say this is what your campaign needs based on what we've seen work well in the past. So it's a streamlined onboarding process. You'll have your campaign page built and designed with Ryan and our content team. We'll design and build your entire campaign page, less the video, which we can provide support with. We have our full service workshops, as I mentioned. If you need any more additional support or just want some legal and CPA advice, we have that in person here at StartEngine once a month. And then really most of the value is in the marketing consultancy to just be there right with you guys every step of the way to say, based on your company, you model off of Golf Board, I really think you should do this, this, and this, what they've done, and we can evaluate those metrics in a week or two. So that's the full service package. Is there any questions with it or anything about our process?
Do you do a la carte?
So that's a good question about a la carte services. We don't do a la carte in terms of can we just help you build the campaign page and go on. But it's not to say that if you don't do the full service, we're not going to leave you out to dry. We want every company to be successful. There's just different ways and you communicate. We have a 24/7 chat service online. We have an email service support that will reach out to you within 24 to 48 hours with the appropriate information you need. But it's more so of here is our information, go ahead and execute it versus myself or another colleague working with you every step of the way and getting you there. So that's a little bit about our full service package here. So full service stories, we have Highleet here. Similar to what you guys do at Prism Sport, there are a athletic apparel company. They raised $1 million. They were one of the first ones to introduce the lifetime discount as a perk, and he saw that work extremely well for his customers. Offer 20 to 30% lifetime discount if you become an investor. As soon as the raise closed, all of the investors went to his customer support for the product and said, where's my discount? How do I apply the code? I want to buy more stuff. So we certainly learned from that, and we try to share that. Elliptigo is a company that raised $1 million that had a very engaged community, and all they did was email marketing. They didn't even do any outside Facebook advertising, but you have to be in a position to be able to do that well. Green Sense Farms is a company that is a success story on the B2B side, where they're in the indoor vertical farming phase. They provide the produce for grocers around the country. And Saunders is, of course, the case that we mentioned. They were able to raise 1.07 with us, part of the full service package. Part of what we did was say, when he reached a 600,000 amount, about 3 weeks left, it was pretty much plateauing. We came up with this whole design of how he needs to get to the $1 million, and that was not just updates in terms of frequency, but he also did this video campaign where he himself posted videos thanking his backers, providing more updates, saying how important it was for him to get to the 600,000 mark, but how much more important it is to get to that $1 million. And that kind of personal connection really helped with his fans and backers. So he was able to reach the 1,070,000 max.
Were these all 60-day campaigns? 60 is what you said.
Yeah, actually great question about the length of all these campaigns. Highleet was around 60 days. I believe Elliptigo was similar. Green Sense Farms was about 3 months. They're one of our earlier companies that we provided support for. And Saunders, I think, was about 3 months, but that was mainly because it plateaued at a certain point, and we wanted to keep the campaign open because we really thought that he could reach the maximum there. Since then, we've shortened it to about 60 days. We've got 5 days left, really work to our favor, and then you can always extend your campaign, and we've seen that working well. Exactly. But we'll give you the guidance to say you should probably post a disbursement of funds, let's say 2.5 weeks beforehand, so you can close on all funds that have cleared. So you don't have to reconfirm everybody. You have a certain amount of investors that don't need to be reconfirmed. So you can shorten that list. And so these are all kind of things that we can coach you on that can really help your raise that you might not think about. And then I think we're good. We have questions for anyone. Ryan, if you could let Howard know to come in. I'd love the CEO, Howard, to come speak to you guys for a little bit. But that's our presentation. Do you have any questions about everything that went on? Go ahead.
Yes, you could set a maximum rate if you want to.
Yeah.
Like I want to raise like 30.
Yes. So good question about setting a maximum raise. Yeah, you can set a maximum of 30,000. The amount of work that you'd be doing would allow you to raise up to $107,000. So if you could raise that, you might as well raise a little bit more, but you can certainly raise as much as you want. You also have the ability to disperse on funds when you want. So a lot of companies say, listen, I don't want to take in less than $30,000. Go ahead, try it. And if you raise, let's say $28,000, you don't have to disperse on funds, but I imagine if you reach the $28,000 mark, you might want to take that because you're 2,000 short, but we want to provide you that flexibility. So it's up for you. It's up to you once you pass $12,000 of your campaign when you disperse. Once you disperse on funds, you have those investors, and now you're part of the requirements of the Reg CF. So we want to provide you with as much resources to get to that 30,000, but it's up to you if you don't want to take it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So can you limit the number of shares that you're going to give out, or?
Well, you would issue the appropriate amount of shares in order for the raise to be oversubscribed. But if they've only invested 30,000, that'd be a portion of those shares that they would get. So it kind of works like perfectly like that. Yeah.
I was thinking about the converse. Why would you want to limit it? Like,
Uh,
you want a minimum of 500.
Yeah.
I mean, now I see not to say 2 million, say 1,070,000, but why would you want to limit it if you can get more funds and accelerate growth?
If you can get more funds, we agree with that. You can just go ahead and push in. Oh, is it stuck?
I think the tape is good.
Oh, okay. You may not want to limit it. In some cases, you might want to just because you're a brand new company and you don't necessarily have an allocation for the funds right now. So you might want to take a little bit less, but it's up to you and what you decide is best for your company. We just want to be able to,
Life stage of your company.
yeah, I would imagine so. We just want to provide you with the flexibility to do what you want, which is why we set the minimum funding range at 10,000. You can disperse on funds after the 12,000. It's your decision to do so. And you can launch a campaign on StartEngine with very minimal upfront cost when you set your maximum at 107,000, and we've kind of made that process very easy. So that's just a little bit about the process there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Howard, our CEO at StartEngine, to talk to you guys, and you can ask him any type of questions that you want, more kind of CEO to CEO based. Here's Howard.
Thank you, Alan. Welcome, everybody. Welcome those who are on YouTube. I'm happy to answer your questions. Our mission here is to help entrepreneurs achieve their dreams and get the capital they need so they can grow their businesses and become successful. So any questions you have, I'm happy to be able to be helpful if you have any. Yes, go ahead.
How did you get your start as an entrepreneur?
So the question about how I got a start as an entrepreneur is I was in college at the University of Michigan. And my roommate and I were interested in more business than school. And so when we were sophomores, we started our first business in our dorm. And we were making software for the Apple II, which was the computer that existed before the Macintosh. And I guess once we did that and we started building a business, we never looked back, and we were entrepreneurs. That's not a decision we made to become entrepreneurs. It just happened because of our behavior. And then I got very, very lucky that we ended up building a huge business, which is Activision. And that became the largest video game company in the world. It's a $35 billion market cap company. It's huge. It's a Fortune 500 company. What is the chance of that happening is probably very minimal. But it was a great experience. And I believe what we're doing here is going to help you, entrepreneurs, also achieve these dreams as well.
I think one company that, one question that a lot of companies have is, we've seen a lot of success and we've seen some companies not do well. In the time frame that StartEngine has existed, what do you think are the most common themes of success? I think that's the question that I get a lot, and certainly one of the questions that entrepreneurs would like to hear about. So in your opinion, what do you think are the themes of success in StartEngine?
Yeah, so the question about what makes success for raising capital on StartEngine, I think after looking at 50 companies, about 50 companies that we've launched, it's very clear that the entrepreneur behind the launch is critical. You entrepreneurs cannot be distant in the background, hoping for the best. Launch, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and everything's there. It's not simple in that way. I wish it was. That would make our business too good to be true, right? Anybody can go and raise as much as they want. That's not the reality. The reality is the entrepreneur has to be fully engaged. And what we have found is there are two factors that are critical. One is if you have a community, whether it's customers, users, friends, fans, in the case you have fans, you need to engage with them constantly, which is mostly email. That could be texting, that could be email, that could be social media as well. So that's, I would say, one layer. And it's not a one-time activity, it's multiple times. As you know, email open rates are usually smaller, they're around 20 to 30%. depending on the engagement of your audience. So you want to be very conscious that it takes that effort of constant excitement around the raise. It's interesting to see that as the raise goes up, it accelerates. So momentum picks up. So there's a magic element to it, of that momentum of just getting more people get more excited when there's more people in it. You probably learned as entrepreneurs that no one wants to be the first investor, which is so frustrating. The idea that if I could get that first investor, I can get the second one, but the first one doesn't want to come in because they want to be the first. That's a thing that we solved here, because the first investor is not a big deal. Because you have friends, you have family, you have people who can come in. Some of our companies use a minimum raise of $100, and it's not a big deal. Now, the second thing what we found is advertising. For Facebook advertising is a good example. Facebook has done a phenomenal job. Just look at the success of their company. It's not an error why the market is valuing them as one of the most valuable companies in the world. In the world, you have a 10-year-old company that has a huge, huge value because it works. They understand how to find audiences for companies to advertise. And the advertising is done in a way that is very well integrated in the experience. So we have found that is a great way also to bring audiences together. And we have found that the combination of your own efforts with your own audience and the combination of paid media audiences, and if you can do some PR in the middle, that also helps. It works.
And one other question that I always like to ask, and I'm sure people like to ask as well, talk to us after Activision, why StartEngine, first the accelerator, and then why you really transitioned and the frustrations you felt in StartEngine to transform it into what we have today. So the history of StartEngine is, I sold my last company, which is a game company called Acclaim, and I decided that I wanted LA to become a tech city. And why was I feeling that way was that I saw what's going on in New York, in San Francisco, and the amount of startups in technology that were doing really well. And I felt that LA needed its place. And my feeling was shared not just by myself, but with other entrepreneurs in the city. And in November of 2011, we opened the doors for StartEngine, and immediately we were an accelerator. That means we were an investor, and we were a group of mentors. And instantly we got hundreds of companies from around the country who said, hey, we want to join StartEngine as a company. And as part of your team, your group, the class, we call them classes. The first class started in January 2012. And we got a lot of demand, and we saw there's a lot of demand for that investment and the mentorship. And unbelievable, there was no accelerator before StartEngine started in Los Angeles. There wasn't, and yet we're the second largest city in the country, and we graduate more engineers in Los Angeles than nearly any city in the country. It's crazy, between all the schools that we know, which is USC and UCLA and Caltech and Harvey Mudd and you have the Claremont colleges, and you have Northridge, and you have Irvine. I mean, it's an extraordinary amount of people who are educated, and they leave LA to go up north, and that's what's frustrating. So we did that, and it worked. We invested in 60 companies. We had a community of about 200 mentors. We had about 600 investors who would come to those meetings. Now, keep in mind, the only people who could invest in these companies were accredited investors, which means wealthy people. So the ordinary investor could not come to our meetings because they couldn't invest. Well, what I realized through this experience of being an investor at that point in 60 companies was just so hard to raise money. Whether it's a company led by women or by minorities, or because they're in an out of favor idea, or their education background was not Stanford or one of the elite colleges, I just realized it's just hard.
And then the terms that were offered are very harsh. If you have a bump in the road, it could be over for you. They could take over your company, and all the work you've done and the efforts go away. So, and the reason this situation exists is because there's no competition. Those investors are not being competed. Well, that became a very important point for me, and I was very frustrated and very eager to find a solution. And yet, the laws are the laws. Well, guess what? A new law came out. I didn't know it was going to happen, called the Jobs Act. As soon as it came out, I started reading about it and trying to understand how I can use it. And that's where StartEngine morphed itself, pivoted itself into a crowdfunding business, because the new laws permitted the ordinary investor to become part of your companies. And to me, that was critical. And that's where we are today.
Great. Thank you, Howard. Any other questions?
They say online, I thought this was nice. Someone said, let's make history.
There you go.
That's a good.
Yeah, I love making history. I have to tell you, with the video game business, with Activision, we made history because when we moved the company from Silicon Valley down to LA, everybody said that it was the dumbest move ever because all the engineers are in Silicon Valley. And what we decided is we moved it down here because we wanted to attract the creative talent that existed in LA. But everybody thought, yeah, that engineers will never move here, right? Why would they be here? And that was in the early 1990s. And we beat Silicon Valley at their game. And that was exciting. That is history. And this is a Fortune 500 company that is headquartered in Los Angeles. To me, that was a moment of pride. So we can do this again here, not about Los Angeles, because Los Angeles is not really our mission anymore. Our mission is you, the entrepreneurs, to make history and defy the no's, because entrepreneurs are used to hearing no all the time. No for everything. Well, you know what? We're going to change that. So the no is not a factor anymore in your success.
Right. Yeah, where are you from? Where are you from?
So the question is where I'm from. I was born in Los Angeles, but I grew up in France, in Paris, France. So that's why you hear an accent, but I'm a native.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Hope this was helpful. We've got lunch coming in a few minutes. We'll have some time to talk.